Well, good morning, everyone. We're broadcasting this morning from the Agora Coffeehouse in the Fontana Shopping Center at 51st Street in Memorial. Come and visit with us and have a nice cup of exotic coffee. This morning, what kind of coffee do we have here this morning? Do we know? Italian. We usually have Italian, Ethiopian, Costa Rican, you name it, we have it. It's the best coffee in the United States. It's served right here at 51st in Memorial at the Agora Coffee House at the Fontana Shopping Center. Folks, I can't get words out of my mouth this morning. Well, good morning, everyone. This is Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and we will have a half-hour broadcast this morning. It's all our fault. We just had little technical difficulties, and we're ready to roll now. But folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government, as you know. Now, before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves of our property, freedom, our rights, and our liberty. To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. Well, good morning, everyone. We're really discombobulated this morning. You know, folks, we just are. And I hope maybe we can get ourselves on stream and make sense of this whole thing. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio with your host. That's me, Joe Cristiano. We're going to have a half-hour broadcast this morning from the Agora Coffee House located at the Fontana Shopping Center at 51st Street in Memorial. Come and join us. In fact, if you join us within the next half hour, I will buy you a cup of coffee. Coffee is on me, provided, though, nothing is free in this world, provided that you sit down, put the headphones on, and you ask me a question or make a comment about what we're talking about. Fair enough? Come over and get yourself some delicious coffee this morning at the Agora Coffee House at the Fontana Shopping Center. Now, folks, this morning I want to talk a little bit about the United States, our debt, and where we're going. There are indicators, economic indicators. For example, if you wanted to get fancy, you can look at the leading, lagging, and coincident indicators. Now, I get economic reports, which I read, which quite frankly I find fascinating, people find boring, because it tells us about where we are and where we're going. And, when they say knowledge is power, that's very, very true, because what happens is that once you know what's going on and then people feed you a lot of garbage, as they say, then you have a better appreciation for where you are and you can start thinking for yourself. Let me give you an idea. If you looked at economic indicators, there are included in the leading indicators, there's the M1 money supply. That's just the cash that's floating around. There's the manufacturing supply index, the ratio of manufacturing and trade sales, things like that. Coincident indicators include non-agricultural employment, index of industrial production, personal income, less transfer payments, blah, blah, blah. Then you have lagging indicators, and they talk about short-term interest rates, manufacturing and trade inventories, ratio of consumer debt to personal income, etc. Now, quite frankly, right now, all of the indicators are improving, not dramatically, but slightly. So this should give us some reason to at least feel somewhat content with what is going on and pleased with the direction in which this country is going. Let me give you my indicator for a minute. I like to give you my indicator. Let's put all those aside. Now, the one thing these are quantitative figures, strictly quantitative. It doesn't tell you why things are up or why things are down. For example, it could say industrial employment is up. But if the government has infused, let's say, $300 million into the private sector, and people hired employees to work in their factories based on this. Well, you have employment that's up, but then you had an infusion of government money, which has to get paid back, and when that money stops flowing, these people get laid off again. So I don't trust the figures per se, but let me tell you mine. If we go back in time, let's go back 20, 30 years. I know that may be far for some people, but if you listen to, just watch the television. We are a television society, which I like to call a television society, because television is always selling us something. In fact, the only time I watch television is when I'm so darn tired I can't do anything else, and I watch drag races on TV. Or I watch some stupid monster film with the express purpose of criticizing how stupid it is, all right? Or how they are. Like I very rarely get a monster film or a chiller or whatever that is not entirely absolutely stupid. You know, you have a woman in this dark house, lightning going on, and she's looking for her boyfriend. Most people are dead, and she decides in her high heels to go down to the sub-basement to find her boyfriend Charles, you know, and you go, that's a real smart thing to do. Well, anyway, but we are not that much smarter, believe it or not, when it comes to our finances and our economy than the people in those chillers and those horror films. Because right now, I would consider our economy a horror film. If you laid out exactly what was going on in our economy, it would be a horror film. And it would be stupid. You'd say, no, that's just stupid. You can't make this stuff up. And that's the big problem. It is so stupid you can't make this stuff up. But yet we watch television every day or television every day because we have been sold in our own minds, our own psyche, that what we see on television is really what we should be accepting, what we should be believing, not knowing, but what we should be believing. And the reason why I say believing and not knowing, because a belief is when you don't really know. You can't prove it. You don't really know. So we have to believe all this stuff, and after a while, the belief becomes knowledge. And that knowledge becomes bifurcated because everyone has a different belief. No one agrees with one another. Very interesting scenario. This is all my own. I didn't read any books about this. This is all from my 70 years of experience living on this ball, flying around this burning planet called the sun. Now, if we go back 30 years, you'll see that television was selling us stuff. You know, there was new toasters, refrigerators and stuff that they wanted us to buy. They really wanted us to buy a lot of stuff. Keep the economy going. Well, when I say they, I should say the corporations wanted us to buy their stuff. Well, it makes sense. I have companies. I advertise. I want people to use my products and services. I don't go into business and tell people, please don't buy anything. Please, you'll really make me feel bad. So they do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a free enterprise system. You can elect to buy or not buy a new refrigerator, a toaster, a vacuum cleaner. You know, you can use a washable linen rather than buying paper towels, et cetera, et cetera. You can go on and on and on. But there was a big push to buy. Before that, we were not really a consumption economy. We were a producing economy. We were the number one producers around the world. Now, don't feel too good about that because after World War II, most industrial countries were devastated. Japan, all of Europe, and that's about it. When it came to industrial production, there was no one else but us. So we flexed our muscles, we started producing, and we produced not only for ourselves but for around the world. And of course, we use television to sell the stuff here. Nothing wrong with that. We're okay with that. Not that it's good that the other countries were devastated. I'm just saying that that's a fact. You can't do anything about that. Now, what happened after that? People start receiving credit cards. I remember seeing my first credit card in the mail. It was called a Unicard. It was multicolored Unicard. My neighbor, they sent it to everyone, by the way, you know. And if it was lost in the mail or someone took it and used it, back in those days there was no consumer protection. You had to pay it. You didn't even know what a Unicard was, and all of a sudden you owed somebody $5,000 that you'd never heard of before. My neighbor's dog actually got a card with his name on it. I forgot his name, you know, Woof Woof or something. Mr. Woof Woof got a card. But my point being is that we started to convince people, sell people on the fact that, you know, it's not important to save anymore. And not important to save. What it really is important is that you buy. You really have to buy stuff to keep this economy going. When I was young, the first thing I did in January, of course after the holidays, is I went to the bank. And I opened a Christmas Club account. And now, for those of you who have never heard of a Christmas Club account, and I suspect many of you have not, is that you opened a special account where you were committed to deposit in a special savings account a certain amount of money every month. Now, for me, it was $10 a month. That was a lot of money. And at the end of the year, in December, they would give me my $120, $10 a month, times 12, by the way, for those of you who have tough trouble with math. I got $120 and I went shopping. And I bought all my Christmas presents. Come January, how much did I owe? Nothing. Right? That's what we used to do. We used to say we were a saving economy. Now we say save. Savings goes to investment because when we save money, that money is used to lend out to companies to invest in production. Very simple formula. You can't break it. You can't modify it. That's life. That's the way it is. But then the credit card came out. Well, when the credit card came out, guess what got phased out? The good old Christmas club. I miss the Christmas club. I'm sure you can still get it, but we don't do it anymore. I don't do it anymore. My wife has a credit card. Go to it, sweetheart. Bye. Good luck. And that's the end of that. So we started using the credit card, and we start saving less, and we start spending more. But we start spending money we didn't have. And there was a big push. Everyone needed to have a credit card. And at first, people used credit card, and they would say things like, oh, I have a credit card, but I only use it for major purposes. I don't buy food or gasoline with it. Go to Walmart today or any store and just stand there and notice how many people, what percent of people use cash at all to pay for anything. It's either a credit card or food stamps. Or they don't have stamps anymore. They have a credit card, a debit card on food stamps. Right. All right, let's go forward another 10 years. People were having trouble with their credit card accounts. Well, then all these attorneys start coming up saying, don't pay your credit cards. We'll sort of arbitrate for you, and we'll get you another credit card, and we'll settle your account and all this other stuff. Well, we started to get really heavily in debt. Then what happened is that when people maxed out, right, the government knew it. They start pumping money into the housing economy, right? People's houses were starting to increase in value. And they said, hey, how about we refinance houses to pay off the credit card debt that we can't afford to pay? Voila, solve the problem. Not long term, didn't care about long term, want to know, do this for me now. What's good for me now? Forget the huge future, screw everybody. So they start advertising, refinance, and pay off your credit card bill. Well, what did people do? They refinanced the house, they took one of the last vestiges of their wealth, the equity that they had in houses, and they paid off their credit card accounts. So far, so good. Then what did they do? Did they stay out of debt? No, they went back into debt. Now, 10 years ago, they may have owed $25,000 on their house, but they had $35,000 in equity. Now they had no equity, and they went back into debt, and now they owe the $25,000 on the credit card again. Right? Now we got a problem. So then if you fast forward a few more years, then you hear about these defined plans, these defined savings plans, annuities that people had. People bought as investments, as savings plans, as retirement plans. And these companies came around and says, hey, don't worry about that. What you got to do is just sell me your defined annuity, right? And what I'll do is I'll give you the cash out of it now because we know you have no savings. We know you have no equity in your home. We know that you basically have no cash hand to mouth. But if you have a defined annuity, let's say for that has a cash surrender value of $100,000, we will give you X number of dollars. Now, folks, I don't know what the formula is, but it's nothing near $100,000. But at this point, at least the person on their personal balance sheet had $100,000 in which they can post as an asset. They were at least worth the $100,000, less whatever their debt was. Well, they gave that up, and let's say they gave it up for $50,000. And I'm just making it up because everyone was different depending on the annuity and the person's circumstances. They get $50,000. Now what do they have? They have absolutely no equity in that annuity, right? They get the cash, and what do? I got $50,000. I'm going to buy that SUV and that boat so I can haul it to the lake and have a great time, right? Now we're back into debt again. Now, we get to a point where people are heavily indebted. They have no more vestiges of wealth. They have nothing left. So now you have advertisements on television saying, hey, how about We know that you have no equity in your mortgage. We know that you have nothing in your annuities. We know you're not saving a dime. We know that you're paying 23.99% interest on your credit card. We know you're going to be in debt till the day you die. How about a reverse mortgage? Now, you had no equity in your house, but at least you sort of indirectly owned your house. Now, someone else owned your house, and let's say your house is worth $100,000. I'm sorry, $200,000. That's what the appraisal is. And you owe still $125,000 on it. Well, you have $75,000 worth of equity at that point in time, if you were lucky. Now, they didn't give you $75,000. They may give you $25,000, but you're desperate. You take the $25,000 and it's over. Now, let me tell you one thing that very few people are familiar with. If you go to a coin store, a place that deals in the exchange of silver and gold and precious metals, it's very, very interesting. I go there once in a while just to observe. And I'll sit at the corner. There's a long, long, long table at the place I go to, really long. It's got to be 75 feet long. And I'll sit near the end, and I'll look down on a Saturday when it's very, very heavily trafficked. And you'll notice in front of each person, there's a little pile of jewelry. Each person has a little pile of jewelry. You know, it could be silver or gold bracelets, rings, and whatever. And then I always say, I know the guy there. I said, what are people doing? They said, they're selling the last vestiges of their wealth. He knows that. He knows that. He says, they're desperate. I said, why are from your opinion or from what you hear, why are people selling, their rings and whatever, things that you normally would hold dear and pass on to your heirs? He says, they're trying to pay the rent. Now see, this is what's happening to America. However, if I turn to my right, there's usually some old codger, actually older than me, which you'll find difficult to believe. And what do you think that old codger is doing? He's buying. He's buying a gold coin or some silver coins, and he's very selective about it. So you have 8 people on my left, and I'm just making this up. I mean, I'm not making it up. This is what happens every time I go there. You have 8 people selling the very, very last vestiges of their wealth, and 1 person buying it. What is happening to America? We are America the debt, the indebted. America the indebted. Now, no economy, impossible for any economy to survive when its people are heavily indebted. And by the way, what time is it? Do we have a time here? 8:15. All right, we got about 15 minutes to go, right? We lose our bandwidth at 8:30? Okay, excuse me. I'm just trying to figure out where we are, folks, because we're at the Agora Coffee Shop. But I want to take a break for a second also. But I want to talk about that and how we relate that. How we relate that to all the reports that you hear on television or even economic reports which are valid. Okay, let's stop for a 1-minute break.
Political talk derived from a historical perspective, not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Okay, folks, we're back. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio, and we're broadcasting live out of the Fontana Shopping Center at the Agora Coffee Shop. Why don't you join us? We'll be here for about another 15 minutes, but a little bit longer than that. If you want to just show up and chat with us, we'd love to see you and hear from you. And by the way, if you want to call in, if you have a comment about this program, you can call us toll-free at 888-773-4496. That's 888-773-4496. Let me hear from you. And we only have about 15 minutes, so please just give us a call as soon as you can. Now, we were talking about debt. Now, no country could survive totally indebted. And we have absolutely no way of getting out of this debt. Now, forget about all the statistical charts and all that. Just look at what television is telling us. Television is saying, you have no money. We know you're broke. You have nothing. Give me the last vestiges of your wealth. And this is where we are today. Added to that, the amount of income, the actual income that people are taking home that's spendable, that is actually keeping up or exceeding inflation is nil. We're actually making less and less money, going more and more debt, paying more and more interest. And the only thing that's keeping this whole basket up is the fact that we have a zero interest rate policy from the Fed. In other words, you have to pay 23.95% or maybe 29.99% or more on your credit card. Guess what the government has to pay? Virtually nothing. Because what they've done is they've taken the credit card debt, they've taken the national debt, the federal debt, and said, good, we're going to lend money out at 0% interest rates or 1/4. That means when they pay back, that's what they pay back. What would happen if the government had to pay even 3 or 4% interest rate to pay back its debt? Not 23.99, but just 3, 4, or 5%. This whole country would implode. We would have to devalue with the dollar. I mean, there would be economic chaos automatically. Infinite, just immediately economic chaos. Just think of that. If the government had to pay 4 or 5% economic chaos, we are paying now on our credit cards. If you go past due, or you revolve, it's revolving is at least 12 to 13 or 14% minimal. I mean, that's if you're current and you're paying minimum due. I received a bill on a credit card of current receipts of $1,704.86. Exactly. $1,704.86. Of course, to pay it off, it was $1,704.86, which is what I paid. The minimum due was $25. $25. In other words, they're saying, if you pay the minimum due and you remain current with it, you will never in your lifetime pay this off. It is virtually impossible to pay it off. Because what's going to happen? You pay $25, how much are you going to charge next month? Well, if you charge $1,700 in 1 month, the next month, even if you're judicious and you really tighten your belt a lot, you're going to charge a few $100s. Well, now you're going to pay $25 on, based on a total balance of maybe $2,500. And it exponentially gets worse and worse. And then you're paying minimally 12 or 13 or 14%. Now, when we're paying that amount of money, what is the government paying? Nothing. Because if the government had to pay any interest at all, we couldn't pay off our debts at all. Right now, the amount that we're paying on our debt, let me see what it is. The amount that we're paying on our debt is a significant portion. I'm looking at this chart and I lost it. I had it somewhere. But we pay a significant portion of our revenue just to pay the slight interest on our debt. What if we went to 4 or 5% and 100% of our revenue went to pay the interest on the debt? Guess what? There would be no services at all. But we're about 1/3 there. Because right now, about 1/3 of the debt we don't pay for anyway. We borrow every month. You see the precarious position that we're in. Not only personally, but what the government has indebted to us. Now, when I talked about the amount of money that we owe, that we can't pay back as people, and we have lost the last vestiges of our wealth, I did not include how much the government has indebted the people. Because every family now owes like $157,000 on the debt. And that's only the current debt, folks. You see, the current debt is $16.8 trillion, a little higher than that. It's encroaching on $17 trillion, and we'll be there in a couple of months. $17 trillion. But what the government does, they do something really sneaky. They say, that's our debt. But in my business, I have to show the current portion of my debt plus the long-term portion. So if I owe $10,000 this year, but long-term, over the next few years, I owe a total of $100,000, my debt is $110,000. But the government says, oh, we only count the $10,000. Now, if you included all of the debt, which includes the current debt, you're talking about the government owing over $225 trillion. And every economist that has made comment on this said it is absolutely impossible for us to pay it back under our current monetary system. Think about that. The paper that you have in your pocket is worthless. It cannot even pay off the debt that the government forced upon you. Even if you yourself was totally out of debt. Now, shouldn't that scare you? Should that be of concern? So all this folly-lop, most talk show hosts, now I have an hour program. Today is only a half-hour program because we have technical difficulties, but this morning, but most of them go on for about 2 or 3 hours. And basically what they key on are incidents, events that are occurring. Well, folks, I don't want to talk about events that are occurring. For example, Benghazi. God, if I hear that word one more time, I'm going to vomit. Or the recent situation with the IRS and them keying on conservatives and Tea Party people on their tax returns, etc. And I'll tell you why I don't care. And I don't listen to that stuff. Because you have to, in my opinion, the system is rotten. You have to assume that whatever the government does, it has an ulterior motive and it's not in your best interest. Now you say, oh, Joe, you're so cynical, you're negative and all that. You're absolutely correct. I am absolutely negative and I'm absolutely cynical. Because the government has never once did anything pure of heart. They make it seem that way, but it's not. It's like going to organized crime and then every day commenting on the news about organized crime and how bad it is. When you say after a while, you say, well, geez, we know organized, that's what it is, it's criminals. They're a bunch of criminals, what do you think they do? They do criminal things. Why do you report on it every day? Why do you tell me that they killed 3 people today, they sold drugs, they did all these terrible things? Why talk about it? We know how bad they are. Why do we have to keep on repeating it? Well, I say the same thing about the government. Why do we talk about Benghazi? Benghazi is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, not even the tip of the iceberg. You can hardly see the tip. The whole thing is rotten to the core. Now, do we have politicians in office that really care and want to do the right thing? Sure we do. How long do those people stay around? Not very long. The people who are controlling the government, the lowest level of the people controlling the government, and I shouldn't say control, they participate in government, is the long-term senators and congressmen. Long-term. Not the freshman who just comes in and wants to clean things up and is going to do right for America. They're gone after a couple of years. Or you never hear from them. So you have them, then you have, of course, the higher levels. You have the vice president, the speaker of the House. You have the heads of the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, all the top dogs, and the president. But they're still low level. You see, who they report to the industrial complexes. There's a military industrial complex. There's a pharmaceutical industrial complex, a medical industrial complex. These complexes, the meatpacking industry, I can tell you, they have a lot of influence in our government. These are the people who are running the country. And the people who run them are the bankers. Just think back in 2008 when supposedly everything was going to pot and we had a bailout that's too big to fail, really too big to jail. That's what it really was. Too big to fail, right? And who was among them? Goldman Sachs. Who is running the financial arm of our government today? Guess what? Goldman Sachs. You see, you have no participation in this government. Neither do I. So when the government continues to put us in debt, we have to be ever vigilant to, number one, get out of debt and work outside the system. I talk about this an awful lot because it's so critically important to individuals to understand that they are, in fact, their own central bank. Forget about the Federal Reserve being the central bank. You yourself must be your own central bank. I think we only have we have a minute left to go, folks. Yes, we do. I lost track of time. There's something, folks, I'm talking out loud about our program here, but there is no time left on my clock here, which really bothers me. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to conclude. We're just going to cut it off right now. Folks, I apologize for the choppiness and the inconsistency of this program because it just seems that we don't have everything set up right at the Agora Coffee Shop, okay? All right, folks, this is Joe Cristiano, your talk show host for Liberty Talk Radio. We want to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we want to thank you for listening in. You can show the support for this radio station by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Okay? And remember, you're either striving to make things better or you're allowing to make them get worse. That's up to you. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano, Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.